My name is Margaret Wixted. Wixted is my married name. I was born in 1912. When I started school at the age of 7, they were building Route 58 from Danbury to Fairfield. I was told that the work would be done by Italians, and I didn't know what an Italian was from all around. I never heard the word, but I finally got a look at the men, and much to my surprise, they were bright colors. They had bright colored shirts, which is something that local men never would wear. I was walking to school this one day, and it was very rough going. Well, my brother John was supposed to walk with me, but as soon as he got out of where my mother couldn't see him, he took off. I tripped and fell down, and 5 guys dropped their shovels and came to pick me up. Couldn't have been nicer, but I don't know if I was hurt. And I lost all my fears because I decided they were nice guys after all. And from that point on, they made life very easy for me by walking up the road. My father was a Canadian. He went west to work on the construction of the Canadian Pacific Railroad. And he learned how to work with wood, which was a coming thing. He was a serious man, and he was a businessman and a working man too. And he was the boss of his own contracting firm. He worked at home a lot. He had a big old desk with all the specifications on it. My father built the museum in Putnam Park. Well, he had built log cabins and houses and repairs. If he was building a house, it involved a lot of labor and then carpenters and men to finish up. So my sister, when she got old enough, had the job of helping to supply the lunches. That involved much baking of cakes. My sister, when she got through high school, wanted to go to normal school. And my father talked her out of it. He told her she was needed at home. And my mother was fun-loving and kept things stirred up. She loved a joke. She had the jokes of the family. When she had her chickens, my mother was very fond of chickens. And she had pets among the chickens. With 7 kids, there was always mending or something to do. My mother had arthritis in her hands, and she couldn't sew. This woman who lived nearby would come, and she would stay all day and sew. And she gave all the gossip. She sewed for a lot of people. So she knew what was going on. 145 ring 2. Phone service was very slow coming into town. I think that there were 6 telephones for the whole town of Reading. And my father being in business, he bought one. Our reading material in those days was mostly newspapers. The main newspaper for the area at that time was the Bridgeport Farmer, and the editor was a Reading man, Rufus Lyon. But then we had later the Bridgeport Post and the Times Star, and then we had the Danbury News and the Newtown Bee. The papers were divided up, and the kids were just the same as today. If there was a comics, they'd read the comics first. Otherwise, my father would read the editorials, the serious stuff. The magazines were few and far between. My mother belonged to a book club, and there were 25 women that joined, and the mailman delivered the books. A book was a treat. We had a big family. We had 7 kids. I remember the boys used to study out in the kitchen, and there were kids of all ages studying and working around the table. There were, as I remember, 2 or 3 lamps on brackets that supplied your main reading light. Filling the lamps was my chore part of the time. You got the kerosene out of the shed, and also cleaning the shade at the same time. So it was a slow process, and it was a dirty process too, the time we got through with the whole job. But somebody had to do it. It usually fell on the girls, as I recall. Meals were pleasant, all in all, except for my brother Charlie, who had red hair and a hot temper, and he used to blow his stack at the table and get everybody stirred up. He couldn't stand the sound of a person eating an apple. So on a given signal, the older boys would go down cellar and get a pan of apples and eat them in front of Charlie, and he would immediately get up and leave the table and go upstairs to bed. He had a rotten temper. I don't know why he got away with it, but my sister and I were just the 2 girls. We didn't get into as much trouble as the boys did. The boys, they drive the cars up in the yard and work on them. And there were magazines that told them what to do. Grease, they used to use kerosene to wash your hands, get the grease off. At that time, we had a school in Reading called the Sanford School, which was a boarding school. And all of my brothers, and even my sister, attended this Sanford School on a tuition basis. Sanford School had a large affiliation with the Episcopal Church. One of their ministers was Episcopalian, and a number of their pupils were Episcopalians too. They were very well educated, the higher type. It started as a small boys' school and expanded quite rapidly. Almost every family had a horse. We inherited the horse Tar Heels. He had belonged to a wealthy family, and the girls rode him too hard and too fast, and he couldn't race again. So we got him for, I suppose, probably nothing, or very little, for a family horse. And he was great. As I remember, he was a big brown horse, thoroughbred lines, apparently, and gentle. My mother could drive that type of horse. She could drive up to the store and pick up the kids and bring them home from school. And traffic was nothing. There was no traffic in those days. Horses were very smart. They would recognize where they were going. They'd probably stop automatically. When I was growing up, everybody up and down our road had a cow and a horse and pigs and chickens. So we were never without food. That was the mainstay of the farm life in those days. You pitched in and did what was necessary. And if the chickens needed to drink water, you used a hand pump and got a pail of water. People had to raise much of what they ate, vegetables and stuff. And then we always had a general store. And in those early days, we had meat carriers, usually from Easton, with a truckload of meat. They came twice a week. It was risky. You didn't know what you were going to get, really, because there was no refrigeration in the trucks either. So you had to rely on the honesty of the people that brought it. The library dances were great fun, and it was summer affairs. My family used to go, and a lot of the other families. And I remember being taken to the dances by my older brothers or sisters, somebody. Oh, they had an orchestra. It was all proper, and they had refreshments downstairs. And also, this is probably shocking too, at that period there were a lot of young married couples, and they would very often have a bottle on the car, and during the dances in between it, they'd go outside and have a drink. And it would shock you. You didn't know this kind of thing went on. When I got out of high school, there were no jobs, for girls anyway. The jobs were very scarce. But one of the jobs I could get was writing for the newspapers as a correspondent for Reading. And I wrote for different papers, the Danbury News and the Newtown Bee, and then later for the Bridgeport Times-Star. There was a lot going on in Bridgeport. Bridgeport had a major league team way back. After I got out of high school, I got the job with the Newtown Bee. They were regular news items, what meetings were held, what the town was doing. We did a lot by phone. And once people knew we were sending news, they were anxious to get their name in the paper. The telephone operators were very helpful. They knew what was going on, and they could give you tips. The dispatches I wrote up, they were carried into Bridgeport by a man who works for one of the papers. I was paid, I think it was 15 cents per printed inch. Bridgeport Hydraulic Company was a mystery firm as far as I was concerned. Very quietly, the Bridgeport Hydraulic Company started buying up the farms the boys had left, and they paid nothing for them. They stole the land, but nobody ever accused them of that. But they did. What they bought that land was for nothing. My father did a lot of carpenter work for the president of the Bridgeport Hydraulic Company. He said, well, Sam Sr.'s an honorable man. He wouldn't do that. My brother Kenneth and I could see the other side. We were on the other side. So we were divided. But all of a sudden, they're in business. They've got this land. Well, then they started to push for the reservoir. And it was a big thing already. And the town was divided about did we need the water or didn't we need the water. There was a lot of politics involved. But anyway, all of a sudden the reservoir they had the money and they had the water and they started to build the dam. But the whole thing stunk as far as I was concerned. It was a money grab. Yeah, I do remember it. And my father was listening to H.V. Colmore, who was my father's god. He wouldn't miss H.V. Colmore. And they were listening to the news when the news came in about Pearl Harbor. Everybody was scared. It was really frightening. And it was pretty much a united effort all around town. People rallied around to do what they could. We had a home guard in Reading. We had several retired Army men living in Reading. A couple of my brothers were in the home guard. So I worked for Selective Service from the beginning of the war till the end in the Bethel office. But we were besieged with young men, 18 years old, and they flocked to the draft board to enlist. I knew my husband from high school. We were married about 2 weeks, and he went back to duty in New York City. His first job for the Navy was in Butte. He sent a skeleton crew up to Maine, and they brought back a wooden ship to clear the mines out of the harbors in France. USS Cat Claw. He was in the French coast for the next 3 years. I didn't hear from him for 3 months. He got back to North Carolina in 1945, and he was discharged from the Navy down there. I was born here, and I heard about history all my life. And we formed a historical society. The interest was due to a complete stranger who came into town and said, "You're crazy, you don't know what's got here, the way of history." And that's how I got interested in the house histories. And